Hello, powerful. It's Lisa, your generative power coach. Today, I want to talk to you about acting. That's right, acting. And I want to ask you, when are you acting? And who are you acting like? Now, we can all name actors and actresses, and those people get paid to act. They get paid to be a different character, and many of them get paid quite well. I'm going to present a thesis to you today that you are acting as well in many occasions in your life. And not because you are looking for a monetary return, or maybe you are, but it's also because you're doing it to get along, to stay in alignment with how people are thinking about you, to protect some aspect of your social status or your business status, or maybe even your family status. So I want you to think about when you find yourself acting in a way that isn't typically your character. Now, that's a tricky thing to say, right? Because we all have many different characters and modes within us that we use and draw out on different occasions. And the more emotional intelligence you have, the more nuanced you can be about when you draw on the right thread and what persona you bring out at one time. So, what I want to encourage you to do is to think about the different personas you use when you're acting or when you feel like you're in your most natural state, what feels best to you. I encourage you to think a little bit more about being in your natural state as opposed to acting. Because we often are caught up in these worlds and these modes, and we think people are looking at us in a certain way and we have to behave in a certain way in order to be rewarded, to stay in the pack, to stay in the family, to stay in the business, to stay in that job. And sometimes it's not true. Sometimes these are limiting beliefs that we create for ourselves, and we create cages for ourselves. Sometimes we keep ourselves caged. This goes back to the rules. What are the rules you grew up with? What are the rules that you learned along the way? You were not supposed to contradict people who were in a more senior role than you. We weren't supposed to ask them tricky questions. You're supposed to serve people in a certain way, behave in a certain way. And that can keep you down with regards to your vision, achieving the goals that lead to your vision. It can also help you. So it's a very sort of tricky subject, but I want to talk to you about this today so that you're more aware of it, because the more aware of it you are, the more you can use it to your advantage. So here are just a few of the characters that you might play in your own life. And maybe these are your true nature, but maybe they're not. You can be the scientist. You can be the dreamer. You can be the romantic. Do people refer to you as a dreamer, a scientist, a romantic? And if not, that's cool. Those are not your personas that people see, but those are personas you might want to employ a little bit more for yourself to broaden your perspective in the world, but also gives you another way of interacting with people and with the world. Maybe you are the secret keeper, the CEO, the rebel, the artist. Maybe you are the homemaker, the good spouse, the good wife, the good husband, the great mom, the great dad, the great child, the wonderful child who is doting on their parent. There's lots of different roles that we play in our life. Let me give you some examples of when you might find yourself acting. And keep in mind that when you act, it can help you or it can hinder you, or maybe it's a neutral effect. Though the awareness is what I'm looking for, because the more aware you are, the more powerful you can become. One example that's front and center these days is you're around people and they start talking about an American political figure, and you are not supportive of that person. What do? Do you go along with it? Do you smile? Do you leave the room? Do you pretend that you're okay with that person as a political leader? What's your reaction? What's your response? Again, this can help or hinder you. What if you're talking to someone about dinner and you're making plans for a few days from now, and this person says, I'd love for you to make me dinner. And that you've got a lot of work to do to clean up your home, where you'd have to go shopping, you'd have to spend money on food, and you would rather go out to dinner. What do you do in that circumstance? Do you say, okay, and kind of go along with it? Or do you say, you know what, I'd rather just go out to dinner. Can we go out to dinner this time? And think about social situations. Doesn't have to be dinner. It can also be like you're going to go out with friends, or you're going out with another couple, or maybe your partner or your spouse wants to do something that you've just sort of started doing and it's become a habit, and you want to break that habit. You want to break out of that routine. You want to do something a little bit different. What do you do? What do you say? How do you respond in that sort of situation? Maybe you don't want to cause friction. A lot of times we try to avoid friction in our lives. So you just go along with the norm and what you've been doing out of habit. Again, the more you can challenge that, the more power you generate for yourself. Have you ever been in a movie that you found you didn't like at all and you just stayed there waiting for the thing to be done? This can be a really challenging situation, but we're acting like we're okay with this movie. I remember years ago, I think I was in high school or maybe I was in college, and I went to see a movie and it was so violent, and I hate violent movies. This was so violent. I just said to my friend, I was like, I can't stay. This is like way too violent for me. And I stood up and I left. And she knew that I didn't like violent movies. I don't really remember what the aftermath was, but I felt good that I walked out of that movie because I just didn't want to sit there 1 minute longer. What do you do when you're in a movie that you don't like? Or in a situation where you're watching a show with someone and you really don't like it, and it's just really, it's going to get into your brain, into your mind, and you'd rather not be in that situation? Do you act like you like it and go along with it? I want you to ask yourself, when am I acting and when does that hinder or help me? And the last example I'm going to use is staying quiet in a meeting when you have strong opinions about something. Now, I have done this many times. I did this many times in my career, right? I had a very extensive corporate career, consulting. I worked for nonprofits. I worked in a variety of industries. There were many times when I felt it was easier to just keep quiet and go along with the conversation than to interject my opinion about what we were talking about and the road that we were going down. It was kind of a self-preservation thing, thought at the time. But looking back on it, I might speak up a little bit more because that was playing small for me. I wasn't being seen as the person with the ideas and the important critical questions and the critical thinking that could have made a difference. Now, I have a tendency to assume that if I'm thinking something, everybody else is thinking something, and that's not necessarily true. A lot of times I have original ideas and I've connected the dots and other people haven't. And it's important for me to realize that. And if you're like that too, you definitely should realize it and maybe ask a question when you're not used to asking a question. But again, sometimes it helps us and sometimes it hinders us. So, on your path to creating your vision and achieving goals that align with that vision, that help you to work towards that vision, how are you acting? Who are you acting? Why are you doing that? And does it serve you or does it hold you back? Stay powerful.
Lesson learned there, and we can apply that to what we already know